Hello, welcome back to another video. Here is one fact from every WWE SummerSlam event from 1988 until 2025. On April 21st, 1988, Hulk Hogan defeated Boris Zukov in a match taped for WWE Superstars. It was his last televised appearance before WWE SummerSlam. Just weeks later, on May 5th, Hogan's daughter Brooke was born and he stepped away from the ring to begin filming No Holds Barred. He returned in July for TV tapings and a few live events, including a steel cage match with Andre the Giant at Milwaukee's WrestleFest. Hogan officially came back at SummerSlam, teaming with Randy Savage in the main event. In SummerSlam 1989, during a backstage interview with Rick Rude and Bobby Heenan, the SummerSlam logo suddenly crashes to the floor behind Mean Gene Okerlund. Off camera, Vince McMahon can be heard muttering, "Nice move," or possibly, "nice glue," depending on who you ask. Okerlund, clearly fed up, famously exclaims, "Fuck it." The segment wasn't live, it was a pre-tape recorded earlier that day, but instead of airing the clean version, WWE accidentally broadcast the blooper to its entire viewing audience. SummerSlam 1990 was the debut of the flashy jackets from the Hart Foundation. In the weeks leading up to the event, Brett showed Jim Neidhart a photo of a chimpanzee wearing a military-style jacket. "Something out of Sergeant Pepper's," he told Anvil. "That's our new look." The flashy jackets debuted at SummerSlam and gave them a more striking presence, especially Brett. That entrance style later evolved into the leather jackets that became a staple of the Hitman's iconic singles run. In July 1991, the Ultimate Warrior sent Vince McMahon a letter outlining a list of demands, including increased royalties, more merchandise revenue, and $550,000 for his appearance at WrestleMania. Surprisingly, McMahon responded just days later, agreeing to the terms, at least on paper. However, after Warrior competed in the main event of SummerSlam 1991 and chased Colonel Mustafa and General Adnan backstage, he was handed a letter from McMahon, dated that same day. The message informed him that he was suspended effective immediately. Part of the note read, "You threatened to stay home and miss SummerSlam, one of our biggest events. I had no choice but to agree to your outrageous demands. That was a serious mistake on your part." McMahon would later explain that he only accepted Warrior's ultimatum to ensure the show went on without disruption. The WWE Championship match between Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior at SummerSlam 1992 was a worthy follow-up to their iconic WrestleMania showdown, delivering an excellent match that only lacked a decisive ending. The bout concluded with Savage being counted out after an interference from Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, leaving fans without a clear winner. The storyline heading into the match centered on Mr. Perfect teasing that he would be one of the competitors' corners, though he never revealed which one. This created tension and a mistrust between the two babyfaces, each suspecting of the other one selling out. Behind the scenes, WWE had planned to turn the Ultimate Warrior heel, using Mr. Perfect's involvement as the catalyst, but Warrior refused the idea outright, choosing to remain babyface until his departure from the company later that November. SummerSlam 1993 marked more than just the end of Ted DiBiase's in-ring WWE career. It also signaled the quiet farewell of legendary interviewer Mean Gene Okerlund. After over 9 years as one of the WWE's most iconic voices, Okerlund finished up with the company following the event. Years later, Okerlund revealed that he would have gladly resigned but was never offered a new contract. He left on good terms and quickly resurfaced in WCW. Just 3 weeks later at Fall Brawl, Jesse Ventura cheekily hinted on commentary that Mean Gene's arrival was imminent. SummerSlam 1994 was Randy Savage's last WWE pay-per-view appearance. Rather than putting him in the ring, he was used sparingly, by opening the show introducing Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler. Later he made one brief appearance to comment on the growing tension between Shawn Michaels and Diesel, and that was it. Randy Savage's last match for the WWE took place on September 13th in Germany. He taped his last TV segments in mid-October, and by early November he had officially signed with WCW. At SummerSlam 1995, Lex Luger made a poorly timed run-in during the WWE Championship match. While working out a contract and growing increasingly frustrated with his role in the company, though it seemed like new feuds with Mabel and the British Bulldog were on the horizon, only Luger, Eric Bischoff and possibly Sting knew the truth. Lex was just a week away from walking out on WWE. In the weeks leading up to WCW's Nitro's September 4th debut, Luger had held a secret meeting with Eric Bischoff. He was eager to jump ship, but Bischoff laid down strict terms and reduced it to a take it or leave it offer and vowed to tell no one, especially not Vince McMahon. Luger stayed silent, fulfilling his WWE dates and wrapped up at a house show in St. John, New Brunswick, the night before Nitro launched. The next day, he shocked the wrestling world, Vince McMahon included, by showing up on the live first episode of WCW Nitro, kicking off the Monday Night Wars in an unforgettable fashion. Shawn Michaels was amazing in the ring, every bit as polished and as brilliant as Ric Flair, yet capable of emotional outbursts that sometimes overshadowed his talent. One such moment came during the main event of SummerSlam 1986. Facing Vader for the WWE Championship, Michaels went for an over-the-top flying elbow. The planned spot called for Vader to roll out of the way, allowing Michaels to land on his feet and follow up with a standard elbow drop. But Vader forgot the move. Rather than adjusting and hitting the elbow, Michaels stuck the landing as planned, then snapped. Visibly frustrated, Michaels kicked the grounded Vader and shouted at him in full view of the live audience and cameras. It was an unprofessional moment, and though Michaels would later admit his behaviour was out of line, Vader took full responsibility for botching the spot, believing it hurt the overall quality of the match. Few people have ever had a bad word to say about Owen Hart, but for understandable reasons, Stone Cold Steve Austin was one exception. In his 2003 autobiography, Austin reflected on the infamous SummerSlam 1997 incident that left him with a serious neck injury. While he stopped short of blaming Owen outright, he acknowledged the experience changed how he viewed him. Austin noted that Owen never reached out during his recovery, not even a phone call to apologize, despite Bret Hart reportedly urging his brother to do so. Though they remained professional around each other afterwards, Austin admitted that their relationship was never the same. Both Austin and Jim Ross have speculated guilt and shame may have made it difficult for Owen to reach out. Sadly, the two never reconciled before Hart's tragic passing in 1999. The SummerSlam 1998 main event was highly anticipated. It was between Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker. Early in the match, a simple miscue changed everything. As Austin rebounded off the ropes and kicked a bent-over Undertaker, Taker stood upright too soon, accidentally smashing his head into Austin's chin. The impact briefly knocked Stone Cold Steve Austin out cold. He later recalled that being out for a couple of seconds, needing Al Hebner to remind him he was in Madison Square Garden, wrestling in the main event of SummerSlam. Though Austin managed to finish the match, he later admitted that most of it was a blur. Aside from the table bump at ringside, almost everything else was lost in the fog. The sudden addition of Mankind to the expected Steve Austin vs Triple H WWE Championship match at SummerSlam 1999 raised plenty of eyebrows, especially since Mick Foley ended up winning the title, only to drop it to Triple H the next night on Raw. If Triple H was set for a main event push, why not just have him win it at SummerSlam? The popular belief is that Austin refused to lose to Triple H, prompting Foley to step in as transitional champion. However, Dave Meltzer reporting in the Wrestling Observer that Austin never explicitly refused to lose to Helmsley. At the time, rumours swirled that Shawn Michaels, then close to Triple H, was lobbying behind the scenes, and that Austin wasn't comfortable with Michaels' influence in the situation. Still, Meltzer noted WWE simply wanted back-to-back surprises, saving Triple H's title win for the following night on Raw instead of at the pay-per-view. SummerSlam 2000 was the last time we would see D-Generation X for 6 years. Shawn Michaels and Triple H launched D-Generation X in August 1997, creating one of wrestling's most influential and rebellious factions. But by spring 2000, DX had largely faded into the background, overshadowed by Triple H's alliance with the McMahons. Meanwhile, Road Dogg and X-Pac were left drifting in the mid-card. At SummerSlam 2000, the former stablemates clashed in a forgettable undercard match, fueled by little more than lingering tension. X-Pac picked up the win in under 5 minutes, only to be attacked by a frustrated Road Dogg afterwards. This was the end of the line for D-Generation X. X-Pac soon moved into a short feud with Chris Jericho, while Road Dogg created a tag team with K-Quick, now known as R-Truth. While searching for the reasons behind the spectacular failure of DDP's WWE run, many point fingers at The Undertaker. The downfall of DDP's bizarre run as the deranged stalker of The Undertaker's then-wife Sarah effectively came to a screeching halt over SummerSlam weekend. First, Paige and Chris Kanyon were demolished in a lopsided steel cage tag match against Undertaker and Kane. Then, to pour salt in the wound, DDP was pinned by Sarah herself in the next night on Raw, thanks to an interference from her husband. DDP had a reputation of heavily scripting out matches to the tiniest detail, something that reportedly irritated several of his peers. According to sources like Dave Meltzer and Bob Holly, Page attempted to present his precise match layout to The Undertaker, an approach that predictably backfired. The result? Page was made to look foolish in back-to-back humiliations. After once again living up to his showstopper nickname, there were no immediate plans for Shawn Michaels to continue wrestling. At 37, he had just proven he could still deliver a classic, putting on match of the year caliber performance on a card stacked with elite talents like Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho. However, the bout with Triple H was intended as a one-off. Given that Shawn Michaels was returning from what he had long been considered a career-ending injury, and knowing his all-out in-ring style had once pushed him towards dangerous habits, it was decided that a cautious approach was best. There was no rush to bring him back full-time. The mindset at the time was simply, let's take it one day at a time. Of course, as history showed, Shawn Michaels would return and be back better than ever. SummerSlam 2003 was Kevin Nash's last WWE appearance for over 7 years. By the time Hogan was released in June 2003, Nash was the last of the NWO still around. His feud with Triple H over the world title was poorly received, and his final major appearances came that August. First, he lost the hair versus hair match to Chris Jericho on Raw, then was quickly eliminated in the Elimination Chamber match at SummerSlam, lasting just under 2 minutes. After undergoing neck surgery shortly thereafter, Nash quietly parted ways with WWE in January 2004. He wouldn't return to the company until a surprise appearance at the Royal Rumble in 2011. In SummerSlam 2004, Randy Orton became the youngest ever WWE champion. At SummerSlam 2004, Randy Orton defeated Chris Benoit to win the World Heavyweight Championship at just 24 years and 4 months old, surpassing Brock Lesnar's record for youngest world title holder under the WWE umbrella. Despite having one match at SummerSlam 2005, Shawn Michaels vs Hulk Hogan was supposed to be a trilogy. According to Shawn Michaels, the original plan was for the two icons to wrestle a trilogy of matches, trading wins to keep things even. However, he claims Hulk Hogan pulled out of that agreement before their SummerSlam match had ever happened. Hogan, on the other hand, said he scrapped the idea of additional matches due to what he perceived as Shawn Michaels' lack of professionalism. What exactly that had entailed depends on who you ask. SummerSlam 2006 was Hulk Hogan's last ever WWE match. 21 years earlier, Hulk Hogan took part in the first ever Saturday Night's main event, wrestling Cowboy Bob Orton for the WWE Championship. And at SummerSlam 2006, he wrestled Randy Orton in likely his last ever WWE match. 4 days after WWE SummerSlam 2007, 10 of its performers were suspended for wellness policy violations. In total, 11 names were tied to the scandal, but only 10 served suspensions. Edge, Charlie Haas, John Morrison, Umaga, William Regal, Chavo Guerrero, Booker T, Mr. Kennedy, Funaki, and Chris Masters. Booker T opted to quit the company when informed of his impending suspension. Morrison and Umaga, both of whom had received respective ECW and Intercontinental titles at SummerSlam, dropped the belts on the following TV tapings. The one name on the list who wasn't suspended was Randy Orton. Not only did he continue his feud with John Cena uninterrupted, but he went on to win the WWE Championship in October. The detail became especially controversial in May 2012, when Orton received a second wellness policy violation. Had he been suspended back in 2007, the 2012 strike would have been his third, resulting in mandatory termination under WWE's wellness policy. Just 2 days after July's Great American Bash pay-per-view, WWE issued a brief press release announcing a major shift. Their weekly programming was now officially rated PG. SummerSlam 2008 marked the first pay-per-view to fully embrace this new PG direction. From this point on, WWE would lean harder into family-friendly content, seeking stronger ties with Hollywood, corporate sponsors, and mainstream media outlets to expand its brand through more wholesome channels. SummerSlam 2009 was the last time we would see Jeff Hardy for over 7 years. 17 days after his final WWE appearance, Jeff Hardy was arrested and charged with trafficking controlled prescription drugs and possessing anabolic steroids. A search of his home uncovered large quantities of Vicodin somas, steroids, and traces of cocaine. Hardy eventually pleaded guilty and served a 10-day jail sentence. SummerSlam 2010 featured the longest main event in SummerSlam history at the time. The match ran 35 minutes and 15 seconds, setting a new SummerSlam record for longest match in the event's history. The previous record was held by the classic 1994 steel cage bout between Bret and Owen Hart, which lasted 32 minutes and 22 seconds. SummerSlam 2011 had the first WWE title change in over 9 years. After Alberto Del Rio defeated CM Punk, Del Rio became only the fourth man to win the WWE Championship at SummerSlam, joining an exclusive club that included Bret Hart in 1997, Mankind in 1999, and Brock Lesnar in 2002. At SummerSlam 2012, when the camera panned on Fred Durst, he let WWE know who number one was. Backstage, longtime executive Kevin Dunn was reportedly livid with the unscripted gesture. Durst was quietly escorted out of the Staples Center, and WWE tried to pretend it never happened. SummerSlam 2013 was the first time Triple H had been a heel in over 7 years. The SummerSlam turn would kickstart the long-running and often exhausting Authority storyline, a corporate power play that overstayed its welcome, but it brought Triple H back to the role that he performed best, the power-hungry antagonist heel. The SummerSlam 2014 main event was supposed to be Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar, according to Dave Meltzer. The match was reportedly going to follow a similar layout to what John Cena endured, an overwhelming one-sided beatdown from the Beast. In hindsight, it's sobering to consider how physically worn Daniel Bryan already was at that point. Regardless, the long-term vision was to crown Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 31, with Bryan essentially being penciled in as a transitional champion to Lesnar. The idea was for Roman to ultimately dethrone Brock Lesnar, before the fans of course rewrote that script themselves. SummerSlam 2015 marked Undertaker's first appearance at the event since his dramatic Hell in a Cell match with Edge. It was also his first non-WrestleMania pay-per-view appearance since Bragging Rights 2010, where Kane, with a little help from the Nexus, buried him alive in classic supernatural fashion. Following his return at SummerSlam, Undertaker would go on to compete in just a handful of pay-per-view matches, 2 more WrestleManias, a Survivor Series, a Royal Rumble, and a brutal Hell in a Cell clash with Brock Lesnar that arguably rivaled their infamous 2002 war. The 2016 SummerSlam match between Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton had a very controversial finish. Brock Lesnar allegedly confronted by Chris Jericho. The confrontation escalated into a brief scuffle until Triple H and Vince McMahon stepped in. McMahon made it clear that Lesnar's aggressive assault on Randy Orton was planned all along. The tension eased further when Randy Orton confirmed the story, assuring everyone that Lesnar hadn't gone off script. Brock Lesnar became the first person in history to have been in the main event of 4 consecutive SummerSlam events: 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. John Cena got his first one-on-one victory at SummerSlam since 2007. This was the first time that the SummerSlam main event was a fatal 4-way match. SummerSlam 2018 was the first SummerSlam for Daniel Bryan since 2013. It was also the first SummerSlam event not to have John Cena on the card since 2003. SummerSlam in 2019 was the first SummerSlam event in Toronto since 2004. It was also the in-ring debut of Bray Wyatt's new character, The Fiend. SummerSlam 2020 was the first SummerSlam since 2011 that didn't have Brock Lesnar headlining the event. SummerSlam 2021 was the first SummerSlam since 1992 to be held on a Saturday, but the first SummerSlam to air live on a Saturday. Becky Lynch made her return on this night after being out for maternity. It was also the final WWE pay-per-view appearance match for Eva Marie. SummerSlam 2022 was the first SummerSlam after Vince McMahon's retirement. It was also the first SummerSlam to ever not be held in August. SummerSlam 2023, held at Ford Field in Detroit, was a record-breaking event for WWE. It achieved the highest grossing SummerSlam in history and was also the highest grossing non-WrestleMania event ever. The event drew an attendance of 59,000 fans. It was also notable as the final SummerSlam of the McMahon era, before WWE's merger with LA. SummerSlam 2024 was the first SummerSlam to not have a tag team match on the card since 2005. It was also the first time WWE ever attempted to use ref cams, which were little cameras hanging off one of the referee's ears. This was abandoned quickly as they were not picking up the kind of footage that they were hoping for. SummerSlam 2025 is the 37th anniversary of the Summer pay-per-view. It is also likely to be John Cena's last ever SummerSlam appearance. And those are facts about every WWE SummerSlam pay-per-view from 1988 until 2025. Thank you very much for watching.